Hey everybody, welcome to Motivational Mondays. Today I want to talk to you guys about a subject that's really important to me, and that is harmony. I know a lot of times we're really just kind of discussing, motivational things, but I also kind of want to talk about like some kind of brass tactic things that are important to me. The study of harmony is something that's really important, and I think oftentimes we kind of get a little bit lost in why it's important to study theory and why it's important to study harmony. The first thing I want to put out there is that when I think about music theory, I often think about the definition of the word theory. And really, what we're looking at is an attempt to explain something. And so, we're looking at music theory. I think it's important that we look at this as being an attempt to explain music, or to explain specifically the harmony behind music. I think when we keep this in mind, it's really helpful because we're not getting as lost in this idea that this is like some sort of like dogmatic hard rules, although some of those do exist. But it's more so about trying to understand something on a deeper level so that we can be consistent. And that's really what I'm looking at. It's not like I'm studying this theory just for the sake of the theory. It's more like, how do I form a deeper relationship with the music? And if it starts up here and I have that relationship, I often have to make sure that I'm developing the relationship in terms of my ears, developing a relationship in terms of the physical technique that it takes to play the music, in terms of rhythm. There's so many other elements. Music theory is just one component of that, but it is something that's really important, just as important as pretty much any area. So when we're talking about theory, I think it's kind of important to talk about the resources that we have available. For a long time, I was playing songs, and I was just kind of playing songs in a way where, learning the chord changes was kind of optional, or just kind of like being somewhat aware of the melody was kind of optional. And honestly, for me, it was arranging and composing that kind of turned that around. I was kind of BSing, honestly, through a lot of like chord changes or a lot of knowledge that I had kind of piecemealed together. But at some point, I remember I just made this decision, like, it's time to step up. It's time to really step up and just truly deal with this harmony. And that's something that I was encouraged to do by many of my mentors. And a lot of times they'd pull me aside, just like, listen, you have this sound and you have this feel. Why don't you just align the proper harmony to go with it? And finally, a light bulb went off in my head, and I decided to actually listen to my mentors. So this is a note: listen to your mentors. And really got serious about studying harmony. And what I found is, great, music does have all this room for exploration. Music does have all this variation and all this like spontaneity. But there are also like these kind of patterns and formulas that we can study. Not so that our music will sound like a formula, but so that we can understand and recognize these things and interact with the music in a different way. So, shameless plug, that's one of the reasons why I created the chorus progressions you should know, is I wanted to kind of create like, maybe demystify the study of harmony a bit and say, listen, there are all these songs out there that use a lot of these standard chord progressions, and here are the ones that you should be aware of in a sequential order that makes sense to study them. So here are the couple of components that are important to me as we're studying harmony. The very first thing is just listening, is just studying and listening to songs, falling in love with the music, and then allowing yourself to be curious about the music. It's not so much just like you have to know this, you have to know this. There are certain things that are essential that you're aware of, but do you have the love for those things? Do you have it in you to maybe be curious about those things so that you can kind of learn and grow? The other piece of it is then, once you are starting to kind of be curious about the music and hear certain patterns that are repeating over and over again, then starting to assign an understanding to what it is that you're hearing, and maybe starting to be able to analyze those and kind of understand where they're coming from. So a lot of times the first stage might be analysis. So if I take, for example, the progression of 2, 5 tritone 1, meaning a 2, and then we do a tritone sub for the 5 and come back to the 1. I don't care what terminology you use. Some people might say 2, flat 2 dominant to 1. It honestly doesn't make a difference to me, but I came up with a systematic approach that I use with my students because I've noticed that a lot of times we respond to consistency. So having that understanding and being able to identify that the progression is 2, 5 tritone 1 is really helpful, because now anytime we see a progression like that, we're able to relate it and make certain decisions. When I do that, I know it's going to mean this for the chords. So I'm going to play those chords and understand how to arpeggiate them going up and down on my instrument, playing them on piano. I want to understand the scales that are typically associated with that, knowing that there are a million variations, knowing that it's not dogmatic and it's not locked in. But by having that knowledge, it will just help me in my journey. After we learn the scales, then diving in and understanding basic voice leading and extended voice leading. When you have this kind of like really, really thorough and comprehensive process, then when I get to the recordings that I was already checking out, and I'm learning somebody's line, or I'm learning an arrangement of that, or I'm hearing how people are voicing, I have some sort of context to be able to make decisions. And the decisions really can be, am I studying this from the standpoint of, wow, they follow the exact theory to the T? I'll give you a hint. Oftentimes they don't. Oftentimes there's something a little bit different. Or does this, having this starting point, now make it easier for my ideas to be open and for ideas to be sparked and to illuminate different options that I have? So when I play over this 5 tritone, like, man, it really feels like they're playing that Lydian dominant, just like I learned in the course. Or they're not doing that at all. Instead, it's more like they're playing that diminished scale and it's off of the 3rd. What does that feel like? And kind of understanding how these things come together. So what I recommend for you is to have a systematic approach to studying harmony, and then go out and find a systematic approach to studying rhythm, as well as a systematic approach to listening, and just really think about how you can leverage your ability to be organized and your ability to be in love with the music and to be curious enough about the music to develop a system and a way in which you can interact with the music so that you can grow. That's really what it's about. So it's not about dogmatic rules. It's not about thou must play the 4th over this chord progression all the time. It's really about being curious enough about the music to go forward and investigate and find out what the music can unlock in you. And sometimes by studying something that's really organized and together, like Progressions You Should Know, you can be in a position to be able to learn and grow a bit more. So as always, I've linked Progressions You Should Know below in case you want to check that course out. But in general, just go check out your theory books, just check out information. And most importantly, above everything else, make sure that you're seeking mentorship from musicians who know what they're talking about, who have seen some things, and who can speak to the history of the music and understand the way that it works. Just remember, the way that one person approaches 151 is not the same way that another person might approach 151. There's so many variations, and I look forward to you being able to have the opportunity to just unlock that, put them all together, and then find what your understanding of that is. Because all this music, all this theory is so ancient, and there's so much history there. And I mean ancient in a really beautiful way, but we also need your unique voice and need to know what it is that you want to say in that context. So make sure you check it out. Anyway, thanks so much for attending Motivational Mondays. I will see you guys next time. Peace.